an Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Spoil Me, covering Veronica Mars, Season 1, Episode 3, Meet John Smith. This episode is brought to you by Agnes Leguillon. Is that how you say her last name, Agnes? She's here in the chat with us. And I really didn't expect to be emotionally moved by a TV episode this early on in a season, but I definitely cried towards the end of this one, so thanks a lot. Welcome to Spoil Me. Alright, everybody, welcome to the show. We've got a bunch of people in the chat today. The Marshmallows, as Megan is calling them. This episode, you guys, talk about going in an unexpected direction. Because, to summarize real quick what's going on for most of this episode, we have a dude who is kind of, your typical creepster high school boy, rating girls according to a number system, trying to find ways to, get close to them without them really, understanding or realizing what's happening. And he tries to hire Veronica to find his father, but he thinks his father's dead. So he hires her in order to just get to spend time with her and hopefully get in her pants eventually. Surprise! His dad is not dead. His mother lied to him. And there's a whole twist here that I did not see coming. And I was trying to figure it out. But yeah, I wound up feeling a sense of affection and sympathy for this kid who I was ready to write off as just being kind of a creep. So that was surprising. And also, I had said just last episode, I think, that I needed to get a little bit more information on Duncan. And we get it. We get a little bit more, which I really enjoyed. And it didn't exactly clear things up for me completely, but it made him feel more like a person, because that's what has been missing for me. And it turns out that part of what made him feel not like a person to me was this sort of distant vibe that he gave, which I had assumed was because of his relationship with Veronica having gone sour, but we find out that it may be the result of medication. And it's an interesting thing because medications, especially antidepressants, affect people so differently. I am on antidepressants, and I'm currently on Wellbutrin, which I have known people that has not worked for at all. I tried, I can't remember, the Lexapro. And it was awful. It made me really jittery. I was grinding my teeth like I was on uppers or something. And I couldn't deal with it. I was taking it for I think 2 months. And I finally just stopped cold turkey, which you're not supposed to do. But I felt awful. And that was when I tried Wellbutrin, which worked fine. And I know that having a sort of disassociated, distant, almost numbness can be the result of some antidepressants and also of grief, because you pull back because everything hurts to touch. So you're not touching anything. And I really, really get that. So I didn't expect the show to have that kind of depth when dealing with him as a character. I didn't expect to if this were a book, there are scenes in this that would have been from his POV if we were reading. And I didn't expect that kind of thing at all. And I really welcome that, because there are some characters that you need to know things that they aren't going to be telling their friends about. And it's required to understand who they are, but they're not the type of person that would discuss that with anybody. So apparently he's that kind of person. He's just kind of private. Obviously, his closest friend is not somebody that he really trusts very much or gets along with very well. And I'm not sure if that's a recent development or if it's something that's always been the case, because this dude, Logan, was dating his sister, and there could be several things happening there. Does he think in the back of his mind that maybe Logan had something to do with his sister's death? I don't get that impression, but I feel like there's no way that doesn't like occur to you here and there. And also the fact that, you know, you might not be that great of friends with somebody, or maybe not even like them very much, but if you are both close to somebody who gets murdered, that's like a bond that never really can go away whether you like it or not. You're attached somehow because of this, and that's a weird attachment to have. And that's going to be the one other person in your life who really gets what you're feeling in any way. So you're going to want to be around them because they're going to understand, at least more than others, why you are acting the way that you are or how you feel or whatever. One might think that he would, you know, if things had been different, if Veronica's father had not been part of the investigation, I feel like Veronica would have been naturally the one that he spent so much time with instead of Logan, because she was super close to his sister. Like, you know, she says that they were best friends, or the closest thing she had to a best friend. And he was close with Veronica anyway. And you can see that in this episode, which I also appreciated getting a little clarification on that, because it's really easy, not only just as an adult, to trivialize like teenage relationships, but it's also easy as a viewer of pop culture and movies and TV to really be reductive about the relationships of people who are popular and rich and attractive, and to just turn that into something that's like, I don't even want to say trashy, just more like almost a convenience. Like, it's just not real. They're doing it because people think they're supposed to be together, or they're doing it because their families know each other because like moneyed families all run together in this town, or there's a million things that I thought could have been going on between the two of them. And I didn't really take it seriously that they liked each other because we hadn't seen anything that really gave evidence of that, you know? And this episode, it's a complicated, it's not exactly that you see how much they care about each other exactly. It's that you see how much it hurts them now that they can't care about each other the way that they used to, that something's just changed over and there's so much baggage and resentment there. And I wasn't sure if that was just on Veronica's side of things, because losing the relationship with Duncan also cost her social status. It also cost her like just peace of mind at school. People are like letting the air out of her tires and spreading rumors about her and all kinds of stuff. And I could see, because of the additional penalties that she suffered from losing this relationship, that maybe she might have been taking it even harder than him. But we see here that he's really bothered by the fact that they're not together anymore. And he really still cares about her, and he just doesn't know how to reconcile that with the fact that her father is involved with the investigation against his dad. I don't think that all right, we're going to get into it, but I just wanted to like talk about all of that stuff right off the top, because it was what I liked a lot about this episode, and just brought up a lot of questions. And I'm not entirely sure what Duncan thinks about the allegations against his father. And that's the part that I'm the most interested in, is that he never really like defends his dad to anybody. He never addresses that to Veronica, that like, I can't believe they suspected him. It's been everybody else in town who has said, oh, way to like try and crucify a grieving father. Not Duncan ever. And then there's that scene with his parents, and I'm like, I feel like he's accusing his dad a little bit of something, and I don't know what it is, and I have my suspicions, but we'll talk about it. So this episode, it's Troy is the new kid who, God forgive me, but I apparently have like white guy blindness, because I kept getting him confused with Duncan. Duncan, Troy, and Logan all look so similar. Could we have gotten somebody with fucking brown hair at least? Come on, show. Throw me a fucking bone here. So that kept tripping me up, but I figured it out that he's like much taller and not quite as broad, he's not quite as broad. And Duncan, I think, is better looking, but has more of like a boyish thing going on. And Veronica, like, she bumps into him, or some dude bumps into her and knocks all of her books out of her hand. And Duncan is the one to help her pick everything up. And, you know, this is the very, very start of the episode. So I was kind of surprised that he helps her in that moment. And then once you like continue watching, I'm guessing he kind of has his eye on her a lot and wants to help her out more than he does, but feels weird about it, which is a terrible place to be. Like, that's something that's almost more tragic than him just straight up turning his back on her. Him not really knowing how to feel about her and not knowing how to approach anything and just kind of like doing his best when he can and feeling like the entire school is watching anytime the two of them are within 3 feet of each other, because I'm not sure that's how it is, but it would feel to me like that was how it is. They're saying they color code them in the show. Well, how about just dyeing their hair? That would be so much easier. They gave Logan orange and brown colors, Duncan gray and blue, so that people can distinguish them. Jesus. So they cast them knowing that they were going to cause white guy blindness, and they just were like, I don't know, give them shirts. All right, well, maybe they're just like the perfect actors for these roles, so I will reserve judgment, but that's some bullshit, and I'm just going to say that. And we have this scene that follows right up after that, after Veronica just being like, yeah, that's the thing about, like, breaking up with somebody that you go to school with, is that you can't get away from them. And I don't know if any of you all have had serious high school relationships, but that's the reason that I think so many of them are in and out and in and out. Like, you break up and you get back together because you're in each other's face all the time, and there's like a limited pool of people, and there's somebody who already knows you that you have something with. And also, if you've ever dated somebody that you work with, similar thing, and then you break up and it's torture because you can't get away from each other, and it's incredibly awkward, and your like coworkers decide that they have to pick sides somehow, and that's awesome. I wouldn't know anything about that, she said unconvincingly. And so we have Duncan floating on a raft in the pool at his house. It's this gorgeous pool. It's this amazing raft. He is wet, but he has an iPod on his stomach that is not in a waterproof case, I may add. This is clearly a daredevil type of man. And his dad is trying to get him to think about his future and talk about, you know, what he's going to do for an internship over the summer. All of this shit that clearly Duncan is not interested in discussing, or at least I feel like almost it's less that he's not interested in discussing it. It's not, he doesn't want to talk about the shit with his dad is really what it feels like to me more than anything. Is that if it had been maybe his mom who brought it up, or like anybody else, he might have given it a thought or some kind of response. But in this scene, he doesn't even say anything back. And his dad keeps talking, and he just turns the volume up on his headphones. Which, yeah. Yikes, kid. So then we go to Veronica and her dad eating dinner, and she just fucking outs him that she knows that mom was at the motel. And I was, you know, it's one of those moments where he lied to her, and he was trying to keep this from her. Like, she wasn't going to figure it out. But then he gets mad at her for bringing it up. And I just, it's a very, like, human moment where, of course he gets mad at her. Like, he doesn't know where to place his anger. But in that moment watching it, I was like, don't you dare get mad at her. This is her mother. You are the one who lied. She should be pissed at you. You don't even deserve, like, I was getting really, like, defensive. And his, like, anger at her does not last long. You know, he's just trying to protect her from God knows what. Here's an idea, people. Talk to your fucking kids. How about that? I know that it may seem like it doesn't work, but it's a slow burn. you know, when you talk to your children about shit, you like lay the foundation and then you have to let that shit dry and set before you can like build anything on it. And sometimes that takes a while, and sometimes it looks like it's not going to set. And then maybe it won't, but just like give it a second. Ugh. Anyway, so yeah, like later on, her mom's still running away from her, and it's just like, well, she loves you more than anything. Talk to your fucking daughter, lady. How about that? But who knows? Maybe I will take it back. But for right now, that's my stance on this. So here's the dinner that I was discussing earlier, where I felt like Duncan was saying something about his dad. So they're having, like, first of all, I love the whole way this is shot, because it looks almost like they're in this, like, covered patio area that's sort of open to the outside, and you can see the pool in the background, like the light from it playing over everything. His dad is all the way to one side, and his mom is all the way on the other end of this long table that could seat probably like 12, 14 people. And it's, Duncan's sitting in the middle between the two of them with these like 3 perfect arrangements of roses in front of him that look just like they're from a hotel. Like, this doesn't look like a home to me. And they're discussing him as if he isn't there in that scene, talking about, what he's going to do with his life. I just want it to be something that he's passionate about. And that is something that I really like appreciate, how the way that I grew up, that never really happened. My parents didn't talk about me as if I wasn't there. That's only because my parents didn't really have good communication skills. And I think if they ever did talk about me, they didn't agree on a lot. So they just avoided talking about me to each other. And they each just tried to do their own thing with me. And I would get inadvertently caught in the middle, but not in this very literal kind of way, which I know is pretty typical for a lot of kids. This is something that not having experienced this, I'm unusual in that, I think. But yeah, so we have Veronica finally just telling her dad that she's going to go to the library, and he gets up and he says he's going over to Shelley's, and we fucking see later that this girl, who I think that's the only time we ever hear her name, it's not really happening for him. He calls her by Veronica's name. And there's like a moment after he does that, because they're in the middle of making out, and he doesn't even like really, we don't see him apologize when she goes, wait, what did you just call me? He just sort of laughs to himself like, oh, Jesus. Wow. Well, that just happened. Like, but he doesn't seem embarrassed that he offended her. It really is a moment of him like evaluating himself for having done that. So he's a pretty self-aware guy, but he's also being somewhat selfish here as well, because I've never been called by another woman's name when having sex or making out with a guy. I don't know what I would do if I were. Can you imagine? Has that ever happened to anybody who's in this audience right now? Because, I mean, honestly, how do you react to that? Do you punch somebody and get up and leave? Do you assume that it was like, oh, they're just kind of hung up on somebody and I feel bad because I know what's going on with them? Is it a casual thing and you don't even take it that seriously and you're like, wow, whatever, man. Like, I feel like I would just be so mad, even if it wasn't somebody I was that serious with. But, he's having this like make-out session with her and calling her by the wrong name. But then we have Veronica having a really intense sex dream about him. And it's unclear to me whether the sex dream is actually like a memory of something that really, really did happen, or if it's something that is just formulated in her head, but it feels like something that came close to happening. And I enjoy this like kind of symmetry that he's calling her name when she's having a dream about making out with him. Like, I just don't know what this means, but I want to think that there's like a psychic link between them somehow, which I doubt is something they do on this show. There might be, if this were Legion, I'd give that more credence. But yeah. Caitlin says, I feel like since it's his ex, I would be done with him because I would know that he was still hung up on her. Yeah, I think so too. It's a really like, it's one of those things that different types of people deal with that kind of thing really differently. For me, I'm not interested in doing like emotional labor for a guy. So if I find out that he's super hung up on his ex, I'm going to be like, all right, you know what? You work that shit out and give me a call whenever you're done. But some women hear that and they're like, oh, he got really hurt. I'll be able to help him and fix him and whatever. And that's the kind of thing that I'm like, oh, sweetie, don't do that. You can't fix anybody. Like, I know that that's a really good, what's the word? That it doesn't, you want to believe that about yourself, that you can fix somebody via love, but just, you can't, you just flat out fucking can't. It just doesn't work. Oh, Nancy says, I thought they were different nights too. Oh, maybe they are. I thought when he said he went over to Shelley's, I thought that we were getting that make out with Shelley scene right after that. But no, you're right, because then it cuts to the morning. So you're right. I take it back. They're not psychically linked. What a shame. So then we get the next morning and his mother telling him to make sure to take your pill. And he acts like he's going to take it, and then he drops it down the sink. And it's not clear how long he's been doing this, but because of how sort of practiced it seems when he drops it down there, I feel like it's been at least a couple days. And based on the way his behavior is changing, that doesn't happen that quickly. You don't just not take your pill one day and start coming back out of it. The chemicals in a medication are going to stay in your system for a little while. But they may have sped that up for the sake of drama on the show, even though that's not really how it would work. So I don't know. So yeah, we have this thing with these dudes who are rating the hotness of girls, and one of them works at a video store. And when Veronica comes in there, I think she's getting something else. He asks her if she can help him with something that's private. And she drags him into the bathroom at school, which gets a lot of tongues wagging. No pun intended. And I really, like, there's something in me that kind of admires that Veronica knows these stories circulate about her and being promiscuous and all of this. And yet, if that's what she needs to do for her job, she will still drag a dude into the bathroom in front of everyone and not care that that's going to make people talk. Like, she's kind of approaching this as, this ship has sailed. Who fucking cares at this point? I've got work to do. Which I really admire, because I'm not that kind of person. Like, I'm always aware of the optics of certain things. Maybe not as much as I should be, but to a degree. And I think that I'd be really worried about doing something like that, even though I knew there wasn't anything going on. And he tells her that his dad ran out on them, that his dad has been cut out from all of the photos from when he was a kid, so he has no photos. The guy's name is John Smith, and that he has no, like, social security number or anything. And I really thought when he, reveals that he's lying, that he thinks his dad is dead, I really thought that John Smith was also not going to be the guy's real name, because I don't think he gives Veronica anything other than the name verbally. He doesn't have like a copy of the guy's driver's license, because that would have a photo in it. He doesn't have anything. So when it turns out that what Veronica went out to do to try and find the guy actually works, I was more surprised by the fact that the kid had been straight with her about what the dude's name was. I just didn't expect for any of this to go the way that it goes. So she gets to work on that, and what she winds up doing is sending out all of these letters to all the John Smiths in the area, which is like 400 and something. It costs her a ton in postage, saying that his son has qualified for a scholarship, hoping that John Smith will forward this information to the address, and they'll be able to use that information to like track it down, or if he calls, that they'll be able to trace the phone call or whatever. Pretty smart idea, to be honest, assuming that the guy cares enough about his kid to even do that. So we have this other thing going on with Veronica, which is Troy. I'm going to keep this short because, like I said, Troy is just one of a bunch of California white dudes to me at this moment. Is he charming? Yes. Is he cute? He's fine. Does he seem like a decent guy? Yeah, he does for the most part. Like, you know, he's straightforward with her, telling her in the last episode with the flat tire about how they call her names, but that he's not really worried about that, and he's coming over to like find out who she is from her, which there is a certain amount of social pressure to just accepting what your friends say about somebody. So the fact that he's not taking them at their word is pretty good indicator of his character. However, there's so much other interesting stuff going on that I don't care about the two of them together right now. So, you know, they have the two of them being cute in the hallway and him asking her out and her like being hesitant and then finally saying yes. And it's just really, it all just feels like filler to me at this point. I'm not invested in them. And they go out on a date, and the date goes really well, but then he tries to kiss her, and she freezes up. And that was, like, for me, that was the moment where I was like, all right, let's see how this dude handles this, because that's really going to be telling. And he seems a little baffled, but he also is cool about it, and, like, tries to just not, he doesn't flip out, he doesn't go, what the hell, really? He just seems like, wow, okay, something's going on here. And just sort of backs slowly away from the situation. And doesn't, like, press her for details or try and, like, you know, get nosy or, like, diagnose her. Because I feel like that's something that guys can do that I find super frustrating. Is that a woman will act a certain way and then guys will try to, like, analyze her and tell her about herself based on the way that she reacted to him. And it's just the most presumptuous thing ever. And I kind of wondered if he was going to do that, and he didn't. He just sort of let her have her space and walked away, and continued to let her have her space until she indicated that she was interested in continuing to talk to him. So, you know what? Handled that shit like an adult. Better than I expected. Definitely. Speaking of handling shit like an adult, Veronica's dad gets called in by the guidance counselor to talk to him. And, she is a very attractive lady, and I figured that this was going into the direction that it wound up going into. Initially, Veronica's dad is very defensive and saying, like, I can handle my kid, what? But realizes that there's other stuff going on with Veronica and comes back and apologizes. And it's just like, I'm really sorry that I kind of bit your head off and you're trying to help. And, you know, I'm sorry. To which she says that, on the scale of, like, defensive parents, he was really not that bad. And I'm like, yeah, I bet, actually. I bet that job sucks. And when he comes in to apologize, I think she knocks over her own coffee when she's on the phone. And he notices the label of the coffee place on the cup because he bends over to help clean it up. And the next thing you know, he's at the coffee place that she's at, and he's like, oh, I come here all the time. I don't know how I missed you, which is very slick. Well done. And I liked it. And I think that he's a very, like, appealing guy. Like, I don't really find him attractive, but I don't find him unattractive either. He's the sort of person that I feel like I would really not know what to think about him until getting to know him some. And I could see him becoming more attractive the more that you got to know him, you know? There are some people that are just like that. They have sort of like bland feels insulting, but you know, he's got like a symmetrical face. He's like balding, but it's not that weird balding where it feels like he's trying to hide anything. And I don't know. He's just got kind of like a clean cut look to him that I can work with that. That's all I'm saying. So I'm sort of rooting for the two of them a little bit, which is sort of weird that I just said I don't care about Veronica and Troy, when I do kind of want Keith and what is the lady's name? The guidance counselor? Something James, right? Ms. James. Okay. Oh, sorry, Agnes. I just saw Veronica has short hair the 2 times she had long hair when they were together. Oh, in her dream, she had short hair. Is that what you're saying, Agnes? I didn't even notice that, but that's a good indicator to keep in mind about like what's happening and what's dreams and whatever. Rebecca James. Okay, cool. So, yeah. So this whole little like subplot thing, you know, the only thing I'm concerned about is that how is Veronica going to react to this? Because this is her guidance counselor who she's had run-ins with. This is her guidance counselor who she goes to school with and sees every day. And her mother is still out there. And her dad is not telling her what's going on with her mom. And now what? He's trying to go see someone? I don't think that I would be okay with that. If I were Veronica, like... Yeah, I don't know. So, all right, moving on. I'm trying to cut to the part. We have another scene of Duncan throwing his pillow away in the morning. We have Veronica going and hanging out with Wallace and talking with him about getting the information about, first of all, she asks him to get her school record because she really wants to know what the guidance counselor said about her to her dad. And then there's a moment where she's like realizing that maybe there might be something else going on because this kid Justin comes up to her and gives her a mix CD. And I love that her mind works this way, that he does this and all of a sudden she's like, wait a second. So she goes and finds his school record, and sure enough, she's thorough about reading that shit too, because what's written about his dad dying is like back when he was like 7. So she really went through it and figures out that he is full of shit and is super mad about it. And they're in the middle of fighting and him trying to explain himself and her being like, nope, you know what? I'm over this. When they get interrupted by somebody bringing the letter back that his dad wrote and proving basically that he's still alive. Surprise. So I'm going to take a step back here with Justin because Justin works at this video store. And there is a woman that comes in, and I figured there had to be something going on specifically with this woman because of the fact that she gets showcased, I think, all 3 times that we see him at work, and she's really friendly to him in a way that felt maternal. Like, I felt like, ooh, is she trying to be creepy? But I didn't get that vibe, really. There was just a bit of like, I don't understand why she's acting so interested in him unless she's being creepy, because I have that kind of like suspicious mind because that's the world. And so I was like, is she like married to his dad and he doesn't know that? Is she like, maybe the mother that he's with now, he's adopted and this is his real mom coming and checking up on him? Like, I had these vague thoughts in my head. So I was like on the right track, but there's no way I would have known what they actually did with this. He gets very invested, of course, in figuring out which of the Johns replied. And they track down this guy who's like, going to pawn shops, going to like doing all this stuff that really indicates that he's somebody who's into theft. We find out once Veronica confronts him that he's a parole officer. So, you know, he's maybe meeting up with people who are supposed to be checking in with him or just like going around and asking questions if somebody has skipped town or, you know, Lord knows what. But the handwriting on the note matches the handwriting on like a sticky note on the dash of this guy's car. So they can't figure it out what his connection is if he's denying it, and Justin hasn't seen his dad in so long that it could be, and he just doesn't recognize him, but he swears his dad had green eyes, I think he says. And Veronica's in the middle of this confrontation with the other dude in his garage when a second car pulls in to the driveway. And this second car is a muscle car. And Justin's dad used to be super into cars. So he realizes, oh shit, here it is. Here he is. And gets up and I really was so concerned because I think Veronica is the one holding on to it at this point in the scene. But earlier in the scene, Justin was playing with her taser. And I was so worried that he was going to tase this woman. I really didn't know how that was going to go. And I'm so glad they didn't do that. But yeah, I'm still wait, what is happening? Is his dad the parole officer? Or is his dad a criminal coming to report to the parole officer? And that's why he has a sample of his handwriting? What? Turns out the woman in the driveway used to be Justin's father, but she's trans. And that's part of, it's certainly the entire reason that there was a divorce. And it's probably most of the reason why his mother hated his dad so much that she cut all of his pictures out of every single family photo because she was so enraged. And that's just so heartbreaking that so Justin winds up telling her, Mom told me that you were dead. And she's like, she threatened that she might do that. And what that must be like as a parent to not even not only did somebody tell you that they might tell your own kid that you're dead, but to be so out of the loop on what's going on that you're not even sure that's what they decided to do. You don't know if your kid even knows you're alive. That is a fucked up place to be. Jesus Christ, no wonder she keeps coming to the video store, just trying to have some kind of connection. And in this scene, Justin flips out, and he calls her a circus freak, which is painful, and is and says, and my mom's a liar, too, so this is awesome, great parents, and bails. But on the way home, Veronica's like, listen, I understand why you're upset, but also, she's driving an hour and 10 minutes to see you for a couple of minutes once a week. And my mom has bailed and completely disappeared off the face of planet Earth. So it would be really nice for me to know that she cared enough to do something like that, and maybe you should appreciate the effort there a little bit more. Which then leads to the scene that definitely didn't make me cry at all, where Justin had mentioned the movie Body Heat when he didn't know who she was. He was making movie recommendations. Says that it would take a special order, and she says, okay. And when he's at work the next day, the special order comes in, and he calls her and says, Julia? Yeah, the movie came in that you had ordered, and calls her by her correct name, and isn't a dick, and is obviously really taking a risk here in terms of being vulnerable and everything. And it was just really sweet and good, and I really liked it. And I don't know if this is a case of the week type thing, and we are never going to see Justin and I want to say his mom again, but I don't know if that's really the way to phrase that. But his parent, yeah, Nancy, that's good. I don't know if we'll see the two of them again. But I really loved this, the way this whole thing turned out, and that this show had Justin be compassionate about it and just sort of listen to Veronica, and what she's saying and reflect on how this could have gone. And it was just really sweet. So I just want to talk about that part, because then we're going to talk about something that is kind of a bit of a bummer. So this whole thing with Veronica and Troy, everybody's sort of aware that the two of them are seeing each other. And I don't think Veronica has any idea how hard this has been for Duncan. But Duncan is dealing with the fact that he isn't taking his antidepressants by drinking, which is also a depressant, so that's going to just make everything worse. Listen, let he without sin cast the first stone. Like, I have dealt with depression this way. Luckily for me, drinking makes me super sick super fast, so I kicked that habit real quick because I realized it was not going to work for me. But yeah, this was really painful to watch, and there's something about the actor playing Duncan. He really gets across that place that you are when you're being funny and joking around and you're so wild, when it's really coming from a place of deep pain and rage, and you don't know how to express that, so you just try and act like the life of the party. The scene on the bleachers with his friends it's just hard to watch, man. You can see what's going on, and I feel like Logan can too, but I don't think Logan's equipped to deal with this kind of thing. I don't think he knows what to say to his friend. I don't think he's ever dealt with this kind of thing before, in terms of like friends who are depressed or who are her. I mean, who's dealt with a friend whose like sister's been murdered? Very few people, hopefully. So this is just a really challenging, strange, and very adult situation that these kids are having to cope with. And Duncan, like, you know, he's trying to act like nothing's bothering him, but he's drunk and he sees Veronica and Troy, and she grabs Troy and kisses him in an effort to keep him from like dropping her entirely, because I think she's lonely, and I'm not sure how much she really likes Troy so much as he checks all the boxes for like a decent dude, and you are alone and you don't want to be. So I guess this is fine, is really the like vibe that I get about her and Troy. Logan sees and does this fucking dumbass stunt where he throws himself over the railing of the bleachers, and he lands hard and rolls and like bashes the back of his head and is bleeding. And there's like a pretty nice bit of acting here where Troy is asking if they need any help with bringing this kid to the hospital or anything. And Veronica's like, no, I've got it. It's fine. And he gives her this look and gives the car this look as they're pulling away. Like, he's starting to get it. Like, he realizes now what all of this might be about. And just the very abrupt way that she sort of dismisses him. You know, he offers to help. He offers to come with her. And she's, no thanks, I've got it. It doesn't even like enter her head. She doesn't want him there after kissing him. You know? So like, I just feel bad for Troy because I feel like he's in sort of a similar situation as Logan in that he is not equipped to deal with this, but in a worse way because he really doesn't seem to know what happened. He doesn't have the background, I don't think, in everything that went down. And I don't know if anybody's going to tell him ever. Like, is Veronica going to tell him? I'm just curious what he knows. But yeah, it's a bummer to see them like pull away and him, because, you know, I'm not that invested in the two of them, but Troy's not a bad guy. And he's not somebody that's like being super entitled and dickish to her about the two of them hooking up or anything. It just feels like he's trying to get his feet under him on this situation and trying to figure out why she's acting the way that she's acting with him. And he can't fucking get it. And then all of a sudden it's like starting to crystallize in front of his eyes. And it's really bad news. You know, like, you don't want the guy that your potential girlfriend is hung up on to be somebody that you've been hanging out with, who is kind of like high up on the social ladder. And you don't want him to have such a hold on her still that she'll drop everything to help him the second that he gets hurt. That really looks like she's still into him. However, on the drive, there's like this whole, you know, moment where Duncan says to Veronica, do you remember how it used to be between the two of us? And he's being really like open and emotional for a second, making himself vulnerable, saying this to her. But she's mad, understandably, and just says, no, I really don't. And shuts him the fuck down. And he turns away from her and does not open up in that way again. And I'm not sure that ship is coming back into harbor, folks. Like, there are certain conversations that you have exactly one chance to get right. And maybe if there's like a break in the case and they have a different perspective via which to talk about this, that this may come back up. But at this moment in time, it really feels to me like that's the end of that, you know? And I think she feels that way too, because at the end of the episode, she goes to Troy's place and like calls him and tells him that she's outside his house. So she seems to be really deciding that she's going to move on. And that is, people act like you can't choose when you decide to move on. And to a degree that's true, but there does have to be an element of choice in it. You have, you know, like letting go and moving on are things that you do have to consciously tell yourself, all right, you know what? It's time. And it may not happen right away, but I feel like she hadn't had that conversation with herself. Then we have him talking to his doctor about whether or not to go cold turkey and go off of his medication. And the doctor explaining to him all of the different things that could be going wrong. And the fact that you can like have really vivid dreams and hallucinations and everything. And we see him have this crazy dream about his sister later. That's awful. And she like walks in and just sits down and she's covered in blood and wearing the clothes she was wearing when she was murdered. And he's like, Lily? And she's like, yeah, what? Did you forget about me already? And she's acting totally normal except for, you know, all the blood. And then like leans on him in this way and like just tries to have like a normal conversation while he's very conscious that she's supposed to be dead. And she's saying to him, the truth is going to come out. Clue in, Donut. It doesn't add up. You know that down inside. I wish you'd just admit it to yourself. Break out of your stupor. Wake up. And he wakes up. And he winds up going back on the meds. And I don't know what that means for what she said in terms of break out of your stupor, because I feel like the meds put him back in the stupor. I'm not sure if he's decided to take her advice or purposefully ignore it. I'm kind of on the fence on that one. So yeah, this, you know, he winds up deciding that he's going to take them after all. And I really like the kind of, there's music playing when he makes that choice. It's kind of triumphant. And I liked that they decided to treat it that way. It's not him caving in. Deciding to take the meds again is a smart, good choice. It's what he should be doing. It's the smart thing to do. And I feel like the show seems to be handling it that way. I'm hoping that break out of your stupor has nothing to do with the meds in the end. That's not even factoring into it. But that's kind of how I was reading it, because those are front and center in this episode, you know. However, when he runs into Veronica at school the next day, it's almost like he doesn't even recognize her. And when she asks, how's your head? He just says, better, and walks away from her, barely looking at her. And, you know, it could be the drugs. It could be the way that she really rejected him in the car. But Logan even seems surprised by it. Like, he stands there just staring after Duncan as he walks away, after the way that Duncan just shuts her down. So, you know, or maybe it's both. ¿Por qué no los dos? So then we have the final scene, which is Veronica. I guess she traced the license plate to an address. And it's like a double wide. And there's a woman who's doing some gardening out front that she really thinks is her mom for a second. Gets out of the car and runs towards her with this like desperation that's fucking awful to watch. And this woman is not her mom. This is her like college roommate. And she knows Veronica's mom really well. Her name is Adriana. But her mom knows her well enough to be like, yeah, you can't keep a secret. I'm not telling you where she's going or where I'm going. And she left weeks ago. I have no idea what this means. I can't imagine. We haven't gotten any clues really, but I don't know. I don't know what Veronica's mom could be into that requires her to be away from her kid to keep her safe. Like, I don't know. So this, and she says she talks about you all the time. And she thought your father might come looking for her, and she knows that I'm no good at keeping secrets, so she didn't tell me. And Veronica says, does she even care about me? And she says, you're all she cares about. And Veronica says, mark me down as skeptical, and just walks away. And that's about it, folks. It's just her driving home and then finally deciding to go over to Troy's house. Which again, she goes to Troy in her low moments. And I feel like that really doesn't say too much for the way things are between the two of them. But I'm hoping that it'll turn into something like valid, because I don't feel like she's leading him on. I don't feel like she's even aware of what she's doing. I just, it's no fun to be somebody who doesn't realize what they're getting into, like Troy clearly is doing. So we'll see how that works out. But yeah, this was a really good, really touching episode. And I'm curious to see if we're going to see Justin again. If he's going to be like part of the crew or what. And yeah, Justin's friend though, the friend that he's like in the hall and is like, yeah, well, I guess it's going to take her a long time to find her. That kid, I don't want to see him again. He seems like a dope. I don't like him. Justin barely escaped that. And I think that's about all I got to say on this episode. Is there anything else you guys want to talk about? Like any questions you have for me before I wrap this sucker up? I'm really interested to see. I just like, all I keep thinking about is who murdered Lily? Who murdered Lily? And I have no idea. I feel like there has to be a reason Veronica's dad is going after Duncan's father, but I don't know what that could be. And I have a feeling whatever it is going to seem compelling and then be wrong. So, because her father's not a stupid guy, he's very intelligent. And the fact that Duncan's father's response was to like get him run out of office feels suspect, but it could just be because maybe he thinks Duncan did it and he's trying to keep his son from getting in trouble. However, I don't think that Duncan did it because of the way that dream was phrased. She's saying, it doesn't add up, and there's no reason she'd say that to her murderer. So yeah, I don't know. I keep saying that the only one I think it might be is Logan, just because I don't like him, and the boyfriend is frequently the one. So, favorite characters so far. I really like Veronica, honestly. And that's like, liking the main character the most is super, super rare. So, well done, show. But yeah, I think that I haven't gotten to know anybody else well enough to be able to say for sure about anyone yet. Yeah, that's about all I've got. But I don't feel like it is Logan, because she says I've got a secret, a really good one too. And there's nothing about Logan that, like, I just don't see him being somebody who's got all these secrets that are worth killing over, I don't know. What do you want to see more of? I do want to see more of Duncan, to be honest. I found that really interesting. Oh, and I didn't even talk about that. The point where he's like, cheers to Molly, and they're like, who's Molly? And it's the dog that he had when he was a kid. And they're like, I'm sure she's with a really great family. I feel like he was accusing his dad of killing the dog. That's what I think happened. And that he is by bringing Molly up over and over again is basically being like, did you kill my sister? Because I know you killed that fucking dog. But he's never actually outright addressed either one. But that's what I think is going on there. And I feel like it's pretty obvious in that scene that he's drunk, and his parents don't seem that worried about it. So, great parenting, guys. So, if only she'd had the good sense to not whiz in the flower beds. Like, honestly, does that kill flowers? Like, you've got money and professional gardeners. I would just Does that kill? Is that worth? I think something happened to Molly. What do you think of Veronica asking Wallace to dig around in the office? Yeah, she keeps on, like, pushing that, and I feel like he's going to get in trouble. And I think she's acting like it's no big deal because it just seems so perfect that his placement there to her. And it is, like, for the plot, of course. But I don't think she understands what... Like, she's not there to see the operations from day to day and to know how much of a risk he's actually taking. So I don't feel like she really is being as careful as she could be about what this means for him. And I'm worried about him because that's more than just, like, he says something like, oh yeah, I totally can't get expelled for that. And can he get expelled? I figured he'd fail a class that he's doing and get in trouble. But expelled, like, she's asking a lot. A lot. So I'm hoping that maybe she comes to her senses on that a little bit. But yeah. It's about all I've got. But yeah, I'm excited to watch the next one. So, and let me take a look at what time the schedule is for next week, because I can't remember if next week's the week that it changes to 3 o'clock. The 4th of November. Yes. September, I'm sorry. The 4th of September, the next episode will be at 3 p.m. Central Standard Time, so an hour earlier than usual. So yeah, just keep your eyes on that, and that's for like 2 weeks in a row, and then it drops back down to 4 p.m. Central Time. So, and that's Tuesdays for those who are listening and not looking at a calendar. It seems like everybody who is booking Veronica Mars episodes tends to book them on Tuesdays. So just for future reference, if you're interested in hanging out with us, the link to the Crowdcast is in the events on Facebook or the events on unspoiledpodcast.com/events. Nancy says, which is also the day it aired. No idea. No idea. But if so, that's fun. All right, guys. Well, I'm going to wrap this up. I need to go get changed and to head out to my Zumba class. It filled the Buffy hole in my life. Oh, Megan. I hate that phrase. Never do that again. Oh, Lord. All right, everybody. Well, thank you all so much for coming. It's always fun to have so many people up in the chat discussing things and helping me out with my names and faces and everything and little bits of information and trivia. So I'm looking forward to episode 4, and I will see you all soon. Toodaloo, motherfuckers.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.